Right now, sit on a chair, put both feet flat on the floor, about hip-width apart. Do not push with your hands. Lean your chest forward just enough to move your center of mass over your feet, then stand up. One clean rise. What you just performed was not a stretch, not a warm-up, and not a casual daily movement. It was a loaded mechanical lift using your own body as the weight. A standard chair places your hips roughly 40 to 46 centimeters above the floor. From that position, your quadriceps, gluteus maximus, hamstrings, calves, tendons, joint sensors, spinal reflexes, and motor cortex all had to solve the same engineering problem at the same instant. Move a mass upward against gravity without letting the system collapse forward. Walking does not ask your legs that question in the same way. Walking is a rhythm machine, a pendulum, a rolling transfer of body weight from one leg to the other, using momentum, elastic recoil, and thousands of low-amplitude contractions. It is one of the best things a human body can do for circulation, glucose control, blood pressure, and the hydraulic movement of fluid through tissue. But for building stronger legs, walking has a ceiling. It quickly becomes efficient. And efficiency is the enemy of strength. Strength is not built by movement alone. Strength is built when the tissue receives a force signal large enough to threaten its current capacity. That signal has a language: tension, torque, motor unit recruitment, rate coding, mechanical strain. Walking speaks that language softly. Standing from a chair speaks it directly. The reason is geometry. In walking, the leg is usually extended when it carries the body. The joints move through small arcs. The center of mass glides forward. The ankle, knee, and hip share the load in a repeating sequence. Your body has evolved to make this cheap. The Achilles tendon stores elastic energy like a spring. The arch of the foot stiffens like a lever. The pelvis rotates to reduce vertical displacement. The nervous system smooths the motion until the energy cost falls to a narrow range. Walking is not weak, it is optimized. But optimization removes overload. During a chair stand, the system starts in a disadvantageous position. The knee is flexed, the hip is flexed, the ankle is dorsiflexed. The body's center of mass begins behind the feet, where it cannot rise efficiently until it is moved forward. The quadriceps must generate knee extension torque. The glutes must generate hip extension torque. The trunk muscles must stabilize the spine so the force does not leak through the torso. The calves must help finish the rise as the body stacks itself over the ankles. There is no free momentum at the beginning, no pendulum, no rolling start, just torque. That is why one chair stand can be more mechanically meaningful to the legs than many steps. James Gavin and colleagues in a 2018 paper in Isokinetics and Exercise Science measured electromyographic activity in 24 healthy older adults, average age 65 years with a 7-year standard deviation. They compared traditional static bed exercises with the sit-to-stand movement. The chair-rising phase produced the greatest muscle activity, and only the sit-to-stand movement activated all measured hip and thigh muscles above 40% of maximal activity, a threshold described as sufficient to stimulate strength adaptation. The static exercises did not exceed the muscle activity required by standing from the chair. The ordinary chair was not ordinary. It was a resistance machine disguised as furniture. Now look at the force problem with numbers. If a person has a mass of 70 kilograms, gravity pulls on that mass with about 686 newtons of force. When that person rises from a chair, the center of mass may lift roughly 30 to 40 centimeters. Even using a conservative vertical displacement of 35 centimeters, the body performs about 240 joules of mechanical work just to raise the mass. 10 repetitions become about 2,400 joules of external lifting work, before accounting for internal losses, stabilization, braking, and the heat produced by inefficient biological machinery. But the joules are not the main point. The main point is where the load is applied. Walking spreads force across time. Chair, standing, compresses force into a short mechanical event. The knee extensors are not merely moving. They are resisting collapse while driving the body upward. The glutes are not merely swinging the leg backward, they are acting like a hydraulic piston under body weight. This is the first mechanism, high local torque. Muscle does not adapt to the number of times you move a limb through space. It adapts to the amount of tension experienced by its fibers and connective structures. Inside the muscle, mechanical tension is converted into biochemical signals through costomeres, integrins, focal adhesion complexes, titin, mechanically sensitive ion channels, phosphatidic acid, and the mTORC1 pathway. mTORC1 is not a motivational phrase. It is a molecular switchboard that helps regulate protein synthesis. When mechanical loading is high enough and repeated often enough, muscle fibers increase the construction of contractile proteins, especially actin and myosin. The machine rebuilds itself because the load exposed a capacity limit. Reviews of skeletal muscle hypertrophy identify mechanical tension as a primary driver of resistance training adaptation through mechanotransductive signaling. Walking can activate these muscles, but usually not with the same overload signal. For a sedentary person, walking may initially strengthen the legs because almost any movement is a new stimulus, but the body adapts quickly. The nervous system improves efficiency. Tendons recycle energy. Muscles reduce unnecessary co-contraction. The cost per step falls. After that, walking mostly becomes endurance work. The fibers learn to repeat. They are not forced to become much stronger. A chair stand is different because the load does not vanish when you become efficient. Your body mass remains. The lever arms remain. Gravity remains. If you slow the descent, lower the chair height, pause at the bottom, hold weight against your chest, or rise on one leg, the mechanical demand increases. That is progressive overload. Walking can be progressed too, with hills, stairs, speed, load, or rough terrain, but ordinary level walking is designed by the body to be economical. A chair stand is designed by gravity to be expensive. But there is a second mechanism operating at the same time. Strength is not only muscle size, strength is electrical control. Every time you rise from a chair without using your hands, the nervous system must recruit motor units in the right sequence. A motor unit is a motor neuron, and the muscle fibers it controls. Low-force tasks recruit smaller, fatigue-resistant units first. As the force requirement increases, the nervous system brings larger units online. These larger units control fibers capable of producing higher force and faster contraction. They are expensive. The nervous system does not recruit them unless the load demands it. Walking usually lives in the lower bands of this control system. It repeats submaximal contractions with high efficiency. Sit-to-stand climbs higher into the recruitment ladder. As fatigue accumulates across repetitions, the nervous system must either recruit more units, increase firing frequency, improve synchronization, or fail the movement. That is why the last 3 repetitions of a hard set matter more than the first 3. They are not morally better, they are electrically different. The nerve signal becomes denser. The spinal cord also has to solve a balance problem. When you stand from a chair, the body is temporarily unstable. The trunk pitches forward, the feet press into the floor, the hips extend, the knees extend, the ankles adjust. If the timing is wrong by fractions of a second, the body either falls backward into the chair or tips forward over the feet. Proprioceptors inside muscles and tendons monitor length, tension, and rate of change. Muscle spindles detect stretch, Golgi tendon organs detect force, joint receptors and vestibular organs add position data. The brain receives a stream of mechanical telemetry and sends correction signals down the line. Walking also uses these sensors, but walking is rhythmic and cyclic. Sit to stand is a transition. Transitions expose weakness. That is why clinicians measure it. The 5-time sit-to-stand test does not look sophisticated. A person sits, folds the arms, stands up, and sits down 5 times as fast as possible. But the simplicity is the point. Hide enough sensors inside the body, and one chair becomes a diagnostic platform. H. Makizako and colleagues published a prospective cohort study in physical therapy in 2017 with 4,335 community-dwelling older adults, mean age 71.7 years. Participants were followed for 2 years. A 5-time sit-to-stand time of 10 seconds or more predicted higher risk of developing disability with a hazard ratio of 1.88. Poor performance on both the 5-time sit-to-stand test and the timed up-and-go test raised the hazard ratio to 2.78. The test was not measuring only speed, it was measuring the integrity of a force control system. This does not prove that doing chair stands alone prevents disability. That would be too strong. The test is partly a marker. People who perform poorly may already have weaker muscles, poorer balance, slower nerves, joint pain, vascular disease, or other limits that the test simply reveals, but the mechanism is not mysterious. The same movement used to measure the system can also train the system when performed with suitable loading, recovery, and progression. Now the third mechanism, braking. Most people think the stand-up phase is the exercise. It is only half the machine. The lowering phase may be more important for tissue remodeling. When you sit down slowly, the quadriceps lengthen while producing force. That is an eccentric contraction. The muscle is not shortening like an engine pulling a cable. It is braking like a loaded shock absorber. The fibers resist while being stretched. The tendons take strain. the connective tissue experiences shear and tension. The knee joint receives controlled compression instead of uncontrolled collapse. Walking contains eccentric contractions too, especially during heel strike and downhill movement, but level walking spreads them across small ranges. A slow chair descent can concentrate them. 3 seconds down, 1 second pause, 1 second up. That changes the signal entirely. It turns a daily habit into a calibrated loading cycle. The eccentric phase matters because the body does not only need the ability to rise, it needs the ability to absorb force. Falls do not happen only because a person cannot push. They happen because the braking system cannot decelerate the body quickly enough. When the center of mass drifts outside the base of support, the stronger the brakes, the larger the recoverable error. Think of the legs as two telescoping columns, with active motors at the hips, knees, and ankles. Walking tests whether the columns can alternate load. Chair standing tests whether both columns can compress, reverse direction, and drive the whole structure upward. Slow sitting tests whether they can absorb gravity without losing alignment. Those are different engineering problems. And this is where walking's limitation becomes clear. Walking is mostly a repeated transport problem. Sit to stand is a repeated launch and brake problem. The fourth mechanism sits inside the tendons and bones. Bone is not dead scaffolding. It is a strain-sensitive material controlled by cells called osteocytes. When bone bends or compresses, fluid moves through tiny channels in the mineral matrix. The osteocytes detect that fluid shear. One important molecular pathway involves sclerostin, a protein produced by osteocytes that suppresses bone formation. Mechanical loading can reduce sclerostin signaling, allowing bone-forming osteoblast activity to increase. This is not spirituality, this is structural feedback. The skeleton is a load-rated frame that remodels according to the forces that pass through it. Walking helps bone more than sitting still. But ordinary walking produces relatively familiar, repetitive loading. Resistance work, jumping, stair climbing, and loaded squatting tend to create higher strain signals. Chair stands sit in the accessible part of that spectrum. They are not maximal, they are not explosive, but they load the hips, knees, ankles, and spine more directly than passive, sitting or casual walking, and they can be progressed without machinery. The same is true for tendons. Tendons respond slowly. They do not remodel at the same speed as muscle because their collagen turnover is slower and their blood supply is lower. A muscle may gain strength faster than its tendon can adapt. That is why reckless progression damages the system. But repeated, controlled force gives the tendon a reason to increase stiffness and load tolerance. A tendon that is too compliant leaks force. A tendon that is too stiff and unprepared can fail. Training is the calibration between those extremes. Walking maintains the cable, chair stands tension the cable. Now the evidence calibration. Public health guidelines do not tell adults to walk and ignore strength. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends at least 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity aerobic activity, such as brisk walking and muscle strengthening activities on 2 or more days per week that work all major muscle groups. The word "and" matters. Walking is not the replacement for strength work. It is the companion system. In 2022, Ana Ramos and colleagues compared resistance circuit training with walking training in older adults. The walking group improved in some strength tests, including quadriceps, isometric strength, and a lower limb strength measure. But the resistance training group produced better results than the walking group and the control group, leading the authors to infer that resistance programs were more effective for increasing strength and functional autonomy. The conclusion is mechanically predictable. To build force capacity, the system must receive force demand. There is an older experiment that makes this harder to dismiss. In 1990, Maria Fiatarone and colleagues published a study in JAMA on high-intensity strength training in nursing home residents up to 96 years old. 9 participants completed the training. After 8 weeks, average strength gains were 174%, mid-thigh muscle area increased 9%, and tandem gait speed improved 48%. These were not young athletes responding to perfect conditions. These were very old bodies, proving that the muscle machine still listens when the load signal is strong enough. That study did not use chair stands as the sole exercise. It used high-resistance training, but the principle transfers. The body does not care whether the load comes from a machine, a barbell, a stair, a weighted vest, or a chair. It reads tension, it reads joint angle, it reads fatigue, it reads repetition under load. The chair stand is powerful because it brings the basic pattern into almost every home. There is nothing ceremonial about the movement. Sit, stand, sit, stand. The body knows the pattern so well that the mind underestimates it. But familiarity is not weakness. A door hinge moves every day. That does not mean the force through the hinge is trivial. A bridge carries cars every day. That does not mean the load is small. The chair stand is a daily life lift repeated so often that it disappears from attention. The disappearance is the problem. Most people treat walking as the foundation of the legs because walking is visible. Steps can be counted. Distances can be measured. 10,000 steps feels like evidence. But step count is mostly a volume metric. It tells you how many cycles occurred. It does not tell you whether the quadriceps were forced near a meaningful percentage of capacity. It does not tell you whether the glutes had to produce high hip extension torque. It does not tell you whether the eccentric braking system was trained. It does not tell you whether the nervous system had to recruit high-threshold motor units. A chair stand does not need many repetitions to expose the truth. Do one and it feels ordinary. Do 10 slowly without using your hands, then lower for 3 seconds each time, then pause 1 centimeter above the chair before touching it. The machine changes. Heat appears in the thighs. Breathing changes. The knees reveal asymmetry. One hip may shift. One foot may press harder. The torso may twist. The body starts showing its wiring. That is useful information. The correct progression is mechanical, not heroic. First, raise the chair height if the movement is too hard. Use the hands lightly if balance demands it. Keep the feet flat. Keep the knees tracking in the same direction as the toes. Stand tall at the top without snapping the knees backward. Sit down under control. When the movement becomes easy, remove the hands. Then slow the descent. Then add repetitions. Then lower the seat. Then hold a load close to the chest, where it increases demand without pulling the spine forward as aggressively as a weight held away from the body. The load should rise only when the pattern remains clean. A system that cannot control body weight should not be rushed into external weight. This is why the chair stand is not merely an exercise for older adults. It is a human strength pattern. A squat is the same pattern with deeper range and more load. A leg press is the same pattern constrained by a machine. A stair climb is the same pattern split across one leg at a time. The chair stand is the minimum version that still contains the essential physics: flexion, force production, extension, stabilization, and braking. Walking will keep the transport system alive. Chair stands rebuild the lifting system. The distinction matters because modern life removes the lifting system, one convenience at a time. Higher chairs, softer sofas, armrests, elevators, cars, delivery, long sitting. Every convenience lowers the force demand. The body responds with precision. If the force signal disappears, maintaining expensive muscle tissue becomes irrational. Muscle is metabolically costly. The body does not keep unused machinery fully powered. It downregulates it. At first, the loss is quiet. The steps are still possible. The walk still happens. Then the stairs become slower. The chair requires a push from the hands. The knees cave inward during rising. The descent into the seat becomes a drop instead of a controlled lowering. The body is still moving, but it is no longer controlling force. That is the line most people miss. The line between mobility and strength is not theoretical. Mobility is the ability to get there. Strength is the reserve capacity that keeps getting there from becoming a negotiation. A strong person does not use all available force to stand from a chair. That is the point. Reserve is safety. If standing requires 80% of your available knee extension capacity, there is little room for fatigue, illness, poor sleep, medication effects, a slippery floor, or one unexpected stumble. If the same movement requires 40%, the system has margin. Engineers call it a safety factor. Biology calls it independence. The chair stand builds that margin because it trains the exact machinery that daily life tries to preserve. Now return to the first repetition. Feet flat, chest forward, hips loaded, knees bent. The body had to move its mass from a folded position into a vertical column. The quadriceps pulled through the patellar tendon. The glutes extended the hips, the calves tuned the ankle, the spine became a mast. The nervous system fired signals through meters of biological wire. Sensors in the joints and muscles reported force, length, speed, and error. Mechanical tension reached down into molecular switches that decide whether tissue should be maintained, repaired, or built. Walking cannot replace that. Walking carries you across the world. This movement gives you the engine to keep rising inside it. The chair is still there. So is the machine.